It's time for Pot of the Dead. Join us!
Hello and welcome to Pot of the Dead. I am your host Nicholas, and with me is Robin from Creator VC.
Hello, thank you so much for having me on.
So Robin, I saw online, and I've been in contact with you for about the last week, that you are doing a documentary deep dive project on one of my favorite films of all time, The Thing. Would you like to tell the listeners a little bit about what you're doing there?
Yeah, so we're really excited about the direction of where we're taking Creator VC projects. And we're pretty well known now for our horror documentary series In Search of Darkness, which is now in its fourth iteration. We're moving into the 1990s. That will be coming out at the end of this year. That's actually in production right now. That's very exciting. But back in 2022, I developed a new format, which is a kind of style of documentary where we do a deep dive on one single property. And I've called this format Expanded. And the concept's very simple. Imagine you've got your favorite movie on an editing timeline. Now, in front of you, but imagine it's three-dimensional in kind of space, and your virtual camera is diving into scenes, deconstructing them, and working your way through the narrative of the film.
Nice.
That's the expanded format. Is this a video podcast or audio only?
Both.
Okay, because I can show you a visual example of what we're doing, because
Awesome.
The first film we started working on back in 2022 was about the movie Aliens.
Yes.
And that is in its final stages of post-production now. It's coming out for backers in May. Our final pre-sale for that is going to be happening in April. And it's magnificent. We sent it out. We sent about 200 of our backers a 5-hour rough cut, and it came back with some of the best ratings we've had for one of our projects at that stage. But the other thing with an expanded format is it's not just, look, join a pre-sale, see you in a year.
Yeah.
What I want to do is I want to create a year-long celebration of that movie. And what we did with Aliens Expanded is we had like half the cast come and join us for various Q&As. We brought in the leaders of the fan communities to come in and host vidcasts interactive with our backers to explore all the various tangents that you can from this
That's
movie.
awesome.
It's been a whole kind of journey for all of our backers all the way through. And one of the things that was very unusual for us with Aliens Expanded is we spent months building relationships with Aliens fan communities, but we also developed a synopsis, which was a kind of 4 or 5 page Google document with the roadmap for what the vision was for this film.
Oh, cool.
And we had it peer reviewed by thousands of Aliens fans that helped us shape this documentary into something that we were very confident that would delight this audience. And we're starting that process again now with The Thing. And the reason we've chosen The Thing is, like Aliens, it's basically a perfect movie.
Absolutely.
It's got enough depth, density. Specifically with The Thing, you've got so many fan theories and ambiguities and rabbit holes to explore.
Yeah, that's what we covered when we were doing it. It's like there are like 1,000 different ways that this movie can go.
100%. And that's really exciting. But I think one of the differences now is that we work typically 6 months or more away from doing a pre-sale. So if I look at our agenda for 2024 at Creative VC, at the time of this recording, which is like the 25th of January, our first pre-sale for our horror gaming series, Terabyte,
Yeah, I saw that.
happens on the 8th of February. Then in April, we've got our final sale for Aliens Expanded. And then I've got this window from May, June, July 2024 to focus on The Thing Expanded, with July 2024 being earmarked as the month where we do our huge campaign and go into marketing overdrive. So kind of rewind back to where we are now, this moment here with you. This is grassroots. Like, I'm going out to horror fans, horror podcasts, people with an audience that this is amazing. Great timing. If you're listening to this on a podcast, like, Zoom has just done fireworks, right? An accident, but it's grassroots. So my mission is to get the message out there that if The Thing, 1982, John Carpenter's The Thing, is a film that means something to you, if it's a film that you really love, if it's a film you revisit every year, if you have The Thing t-shirt, if you have The Thing poster, if you have The Thing mug, right, then please sign up to our survey. It's free, and we just want to hear from The Thing fans. We want you to tell us, what are you looking to explore in a documentary? And where we are in this timeline is a couple of months from now, we're going to collate all the responses, and we've had hundreds of responses already, and it's just been just over a week. We're going to collate all of that, and we're going to become a mirror, and we're going to push it all back out to you in the form of a synopsis, which again, we want The Thing fandom to review, to critique, to tell us how we can improve it, how we can make it for your taste. What would you like? What rabbit holes would you like us to go down with this? And our mission is to create something which is a really niche but really premium piece of long form entertainment. Alongside that, we want to, from, I would say, September 2024 to the end of 2025, we want to have a year-long The Thing celebration. So get every kind of expert who knows about this movie to come in, join us, get the cast members that are remaining to come in and talk with us, and make this like an epic, unique event. And that's the mission. And it's really interesting because I'm having the most amazing conversations. This is, I think, the 5th podcast that I've done, right? And I'm just having such fun, and it feels like I'm on a worthy, noble mission.
That's awesome. You're just like going out there, literally, for you specifically, is The Thing something you grew up with and that's part of the drive for it, or is it something you came to kind of a little later in life?
So I watched, it's a great question, and it's actually one of the questions we ask in the survey.
Yes.
Right. But for me personally, I was very young. I think I must have been about 6 or 7 when I saw it. I remember the chest opening scene. It was a visceral memory, and I've got a theory that what I'm noticing in the survey feedback is the demographic seems to be highly skewed to men. So if you're a woman or non-binary, please be counted in this. But at the moment, the majority of feedback is from men over the age of 36. So 36 to 55. And it's weird. Like, I'm having these conversations. It's like this brotherhood. It's like, if you know, you know.
Yeah.
But I was very young, and my theory is that, it's like there's this metaphor, this saying, which is the same man doesn't step in the same river twice. And I like to apply it to movies because I first watched it when I was about 6 or 7. I'm 46 years old. I watched it 2 weeks ago at the cinema, and I'm a different man, and it's a different film. How I relate to it, what I appreciate in it is different. And my appreciation of that film has grown as I've grown. And what's amazing is I can still enjoy it, but every time I see it, I see more nuance. And I think with The Thing, the thing with The Thing is that it's the authenticity and the reality of the universe it places you in.
Oh, absolutely.
There isn't a chink in anyone's performance. It's tight. It doesn't waste time. And as soon as you put it on, you see that opening shot of the Arctic.
Yep.
You're plugged in. And there's a certain magic to those films. They kind of attach themselves to our psyches. And what happens now is 40 years on, the advent of the internet, the fans have gone wild with theories, with explanations, and it's ongoing. We want to tap into that. We want to create something where, we know as a producer, we know Creative VC that if we've done a good job, if you get to the end of one of our documentaries and you're inspired to watch something.
There you go. Right? Yeah.
And how I want you to feel at the end of The Thing Expanded is I want you to go and revisit that film. Maybe you've seen it 50, 100, 200 times, and I want it to feel like a brand new film to you. I want you to see it in a new way. And that's where I think we can create value for this audience, because we're taking something you love, inside out, everything about it, but we're showing it to you in a new way. So you can extract even more value out of something you already love. And I think that's the concept with the expanded format, certainly. And again, the reason why I'm having these conversations is because every time I speak to someone about it, it's like this kinetic energy drives these projects forward. And creative projects are at their most vulnerable when they're embryonic.
Yes.
And this is embryonic. Although I've got an incredibly clear vision of what I want to create, the detail needs to be there. And that's where that slow process of having conversations with real fans who've reached out to me because they're interested in this. It's like Thundercats, and it's like the bat signal has gone up. Everyone's on, So and that's something that we really treasure.
Yeah. It was really interesting because I came upon your work with the In Search of Darkness through Kickstarter and then later on Shudder. And you're saying that you've got an Aliens coming out, deep dive or expanded version. You said that you've got the Terabytes, which is all horror video games, I believe, right? Like the history of. And then you've got this, and it seems like you guys really have like a nice focus on I don't want to say like a universe that you guys yourselves are building, but it's definitely a catalog to be very proud of, and it's very interesting.
It's so lovely to hear. It's such a collaboration, and I think that the values that we're trying to live up to, our tagline is fandom with purpose. So I look at you, I look at the background, fantastic, and I'll make certain judgments, but one of those judgments would be, the pop culture you align with, which let's say is slanted towards horror. Yeah. That's actually part of your identity. That's part of your energy, your psyche, and what Creative VC and my team want to do is take the energy and turn it into something you can hold. Something which is a kind of manifestation of, the peculiar interests you have, the kind of, when you're on Reddit late at night, looking at a thread about a random, obscure horror movie, that energy is what drives what we do. And, we think small in terms of audience. We're not interested in Netflix. We're not interested, to be honest, in anything outside of our direct audience. So when we make a project, we make it for 5,000, 10,000, maximum 15,000 people.
Yeah.
Right. And we don't care about anyone outside of that, and we want our work to be polarizing. Either you love it or it's not for you, and that's fine.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because it's if you're trying to appease everybody, you're more likely to appease nobody. So, just kind of going into it being like, it's a labor of love. This is what I want. I know what the people want, and just kind of facilitating that bit of work. And I can say for myself that I'm greatly appreciative of it.
Thank you. And it's such a wonderful feeling. But what I've learned now, because Creative VC will be 6 years old in May, is that there's a tendency to get after a while, you have a hit with something, people love it and say lovely things, and it's easy for that to get to your head. But I think that our team is very grounded, and what we're trying to do with each project is improve. And what I mean by that is, to be honest, it all comes down to dialogue. Right, so the closer and more intimate the dialogue between us as producers and you as a participating audience, the better the outcome will be. And it's that intimacy that I want to grow. So when we do a project now, no one really hears from me. I always push the director out in front. They'll do all the press, maybe another producer. I kind of sit in the background, but I'm rolling my sleeves up as this project's really embryonic, because I really want to speak to the fandom and say, number one, we can't do this without you. Number two, we can't actually do this without you, because we need you to work with us to develop, we've got the block of marble, we want to create the Michelangelo, we want to create the kind of amazing statue from it, and we need your guidance, and so that's quite unusual in production. That doesn't generally happen. And as a business now, we're investing a lot more time in tools that help us communicate continually with our backers. And with the thing expanded, we've got about 80,000 backers. We're probably a little bit over that now. We have not emailed our backer base about this project yet, because we've got terabytes terabytes is beginning, we've got Aliens Expanded ending, we've got In Search of Darkness in production, so we don't want to bombard them, get them excited about something that isn't going to come around till July. And so I'm 6 months out, so I'm doing kind of like the grassroots. When I put that post up on our Instagram, which you responded to, I'm like, I don't know who's gonna, maybe no one will respond, Yeah. Right?
Just
but
throw
what's
the
really
net out there.
Yeah, what's really interesting is now I'm booked on 20 podcasts, and I'm like, people have shown up, and I'm like really grateful, because each time I have one of these conversations, it's manifesting. So I'm going to ask you a question, if you don't mind, which is like, we're making this deep dive documentary. We don't want it to be a making of.
Correct.
It will have elements of that, evidently. Obviously, we're going to talk about practical effects. We're going to talk about how they were made. I want all the best people in the world to be in this. I want Quentin Tarantino to be in this, and we're going to try for Rob Bottin. We don't know if we'll get him, right? But what would you like to see in a documentary about the thing, with this expanded kind of framing around it?
If you're looking for like kind of out of the box stuff, when I answered the questionnaire that you had sent out and everything, what I think the thing that I've never seen is people that were in the business at the time, but were not horror centric. So you're I'm trying to remember his name, but like the directors of like your rom-coms back then and stuff like that. So they kind of give a viewpoint on what the marketplace was actually like then. And then when the thing comes out, it's granted, it's not a box office success or anything like that. It definitely got its legs and stuff when it hit VHS and hit the home market. But like, for a fact that Carpenter had already, got his roots into Hollywood a bit here, and this was like a big budget horror film, especially for the time and everything. I believe it was made for $15 million, and the first Friday the 13th was made for less than $1 million and stuff like that. This was even made for more than Alien was, which I believe was $11 million back in '78. So actually getting to talk to other people that would have been big names at that time, directing, not even necessarily big names, but like people that are putting out the Pretty in Pinks and stuff like that, because that is coming out, and they, just because they're making these more docile films, or however more family appropriate films and stuff, does not mean that they aren't interested in what is coming out, especially when you're talking about directors that have visions and stuff like that, to then see somebody that Carpenter has a very singular vision and what he wants it to kind of look like and everything. It'd be very interesting to see how those people look at the film then, or even now.
I think that's a really interesting viewpoint, and it does tie into a pattern that we're starting to see in the survey results. So one of the things people are asking for is, I'm paraphrasing, but essentially, what was the impact of it failing, and why were the reasons behind its failure, right?
Yes.
And I actually think there's a story there about quote unquote failure. You know, it took that film 15 years to find its audience.
Yeah.
Right. But look at what, I mean, you can't, we would never say this is, you know, representing In Search of Darkness, we would never say any film is the best horror movie.
Correct.
But you can say The Thing is one of the best horror movies ever made.
Absolutely.
I think that's a correct statement. And what I'm learning literally every day with having these kind of conversations is there is something unique about the relationship between that movie and its fans. It's just something different. And I'm going to come back to your point about wanting to see that, because what you're really talking about is context.
Correct.
Like, what was the marketplace? I think that's a really great point. That's a really valid point, and it's something that we should bring up in a section where we talk about what happened, what was happening in the marketplace. You know, we had E.T., we had Blade Runner.
Yeah.
It was a tough gig. Gig.
I think E.T. came out like literally like a month or two prior. So it's one of those things where it's like, oh, you know, Reese's Pieces and stuff. And then it's just like dog faces falling off and tentacles. And it's just like, I can't do this.
I'm going to get the guy's name wrong, so forgive me. But you know, I'm busily typing into my I think his name's Ross Perry. Here we go. So Ross Perry, if you're listening, thank you, buddy. He sent us a link to like all the archives of The Thing advertisements in newspapers.
Okay.
Across North America and the UK, and there's scans of, I don't know how he's collated it, but you know, he's bagged himself a thank you in the credits for that. We're gonna start posting those on our social soon. But the marketing, you know, might have been a problem as well. And, you know, it's very, very new. Although now we recognize Drew Struzan's artwork as absolutely iconic.
Yeah.
Sometimes things are just ahead of their time, and timing's so important. And you know, I was at the cinema in London 2 weeks ago, at the British Film Institute, which is an incredible cinema on the South Bank next to the River Thames. Lovely premium deluxe cinema, 4K showing of The Thing. It's packed.
Oh yeah.
And there was people there that had evidently never seen it before. And
oh my goodness.
They were watching it for the first time, and it was interesting hearing the shrieks. I can't remember the last time I've been in the cinema where I really hear that.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating just there. And because I was there watching it, and I was watching it with purpose, because I'm like, I'm going to do a piece on this. And, you know, it still bangs. And, you know, after 40 plus years, it's quite incredible. You know, I think one of the things we want to make more of is the experience. So, what do I mean by that? I mean that I'm having these conversations with really smart, articulate hosts at the moment that have their own shows, have built their own audience. Now, the way these films work is we can't, even though there's some really valid, charismatic speakers, we can't kind of cram them into the film, because you know, when we do these kind of films, we kind of need the biggest names and the kind of optics around it, right? However, one of the things I want to create, and this is an idea, I'm kind of throwing it out to you actually.
All right.
Right, is I would love to have a kind of digital place where we could capture the fan viewpoint, but delivered by really articulate, passionate fans that know how to communicate on camera, and kind of capture that discussion and make that part of the overall experience.
All right.
There's something that we did with In Search of Darkness 3, which we're going to carry on with into our other projects now, which is we went out to backers and said, make us a little video on your webcam about what In Search of Darkness has meant to you and what 80s horror means to you, and we'll put the best ones in the credits. And we did, and it was, you know, it sounds like it could be cringe, but actually it was completely on point. right?
Yeah.
And I want to capture, as part of this year-long celebration, the love, for want of a better word, that this movie has created for this generation of fans.
Very cool. Like, it's kind of like tipping your hat back to the ones that are trying to, help you out and everything, because, without you and your creative team, like, this is like, you guys are the driving force to it and everything. So like, that's very nice.
That's very kind to say. I mean, I've always took the position of we're just the same as you guys. We're fans.
Yep.
We're and we're all, every kind of podcast I'm fortunately appearing on at the moment, they're creators the same as us. They almost are forced to express themselves.
Correct.
Right. and it's the same with us. And it's like, well, let's collaborate. Let's make this something that we can look back on in a decade and be like, it was wicked.
Yeah.
With In Search of Darkness, one of the things I'm really proud of, like, I've got the box set here, and this represents about 4 years of my life. This is 15 hours of, no one's going to come along and deliver. I can't conceive of anyone delivering a more concise.
Absolutely not.
Especially now that, some of the contributors have passed.
Yes.
Right? So the way I look at it is, in 100 years from now, cinema, or whatever it's become, the historians of that, when they want to learn about 80s horror, are going to look. You can't have that conversation without bringing up In Search of Darkness. With Aliens expanded, there's been some incredible documentaries, Superior Firepower, on the Blu-rays, but I think our documentary just brings everything bang up to date.
Awesome.
And it's really from the perspective of the fans, and I think that'll be an evergreen. That's part of that conversation now.
Absolutely.
And I think the ultimate goal with The Thing Expanded is, if you end up being part of this project, you come on board, you end up being part of that conversation forever. It's kind of, you morph into that universe. And the way I look at it is, if you're a filmmaker and you're fortunate enough to create a film and a universe and a piece of art that transcends the commercial aim of movie making, gets into the psyche, merges into pop culture, it doesn't really belong to you anymore. That, when it crosses the chasm into that space, it's now the domain of the fans. And what I want to do is come in and kind of start there and manifest something for this, which, when people hold, like, In Search of Darkness, they've got their name in it.
Yes.
That's something that connects them to this universe in a very real way, and that means something. And that's why, the merchandising we do for In Search of Darkness and our other projects, when they do turn up on eBay, they tend to be rather expensive, because there's not many of them, because people don't let them go very often.
Yeah, because like In Search of Darkness is definitely, like how you were saying, it's a very what's the word that I want to use? Extensive. Like, you can sit through just one of the 3 volumes and be introduced to a plethora of different horror films that you've never heard of, from viewpoints that you may not even know this person and stuff, but you may be very interested in the way that they're talking about this film and talking about that film. And it's definitely one of those things that, like, when I'm talking to a horror fan that is trying to find some new things, that's definitely one of the things that I point them in the direction of, because it's like, I can give you my personal tastes, but that might not be for you. Here's 15 hours of people's personal tastes and you're gonna find something. Like,
it's interesting, right? Because when I set that project up, for me, In Search of Darkness was about trying to capture an emotion. And I was in my late 30s, and this was 2018. And I wanted to capture the feeling of what I was doing at the time. And I don't know, it was like a tractor beam. I was going online looking at old VHS cover art from 80s horror movies. And it made me feel ever so nostalgic. And I thought, that's the emotion that I want to capture. and that's what led to In Search of Darkness. And but I couldn't have conceived of what it has become and what it means. And so what I mean by that is that dialogue we started with the fan base, we found out people would write to us and say, oh, In Search of Darkness introduced me to this movie. And we didn't realize that's what it was. So then we started printing, in the booklets, like checklists. Where you could check off all the movies that you've seen, and then it would show you the ones you hadn't seen. You could check it out, and then if you went to 80s horror, if you went to Instagram or Twitter or whatever, and go to at 80s horror doc, on the Linktree link, you can actually download a PDF which has the trilogy, the checklists for all three documentaries, and you can print. There's a printer safe version, doesn't kill your ink. And you can just tick off, all the ones you've seen. And that has, so what we've realized, the In Search of Darkness kind of juggernaut now has become a kind of semi-curation tool, which wasn't part of its initial design, but it's been part of this constant iteration. And, when we did In Search of Darkness 3, and when we did the preparation for In Search of Darkness 1994, we extensively surveyed our backers to find out what movies do you want us to cover. And it's crazy, like that I don't think I've mentioned this before, but about a week ago, on our social media, we put out a post about the movie Serial Mum of Sybil Shepherd.
Yes.
Which I confess that I have not seen in like 20 years, right?
I think wire hangers.
Yeah, right. I think it's an early performance of Matthew Lillard, who went on to Scream, right?
Yes.
And it's gone absolutely bonkers on Facebook, and I'm talking about like 14,000 interactions.
Wow.
Like thousands of comments, and I rang David Weiner, our director, and David, we need to make this section a little bit longer.
We need to give it an extra 5 or 10.
Yeah, give it a couple more minutes. Like it's a lot, So you it's very much that kind of dialogue base, and I think ultimately, and I said this to my team this year, I just want to have the most fun, and I think part of that is really doubling down on being, with the people, for the people. So kind of recognize that we are exactly the same as you, and what we want to do is kind of manifest the same things as you. So create something which you can hold, which feels like, God, this has been given a lot of love and attention, and that ultimately you can enjoy again and again. I mean, I think one of the things I like about In Search of Darkness, and people have had tattoos with the artwork and they've done mural, like all sorts of stuff. And people write to us and they say, look, I just have it on in the background. Yes. People put it on as like a video comfort blanket.
I legitimately just did that last night.
Yeah, like sometimes people don't want to invest 90 minutes in a film when they're not mentally there, but they want to get the feeling of that horror, because horror releases anxiety, horror releases fear.
Correct.
And I think, In Search of Darkness, although it's not scary to watch, it's highly nostalgic. And I think that is there's a warmth and an affection there that horror fans can kind of tap into on demand.
Yeah, and then also, like, it's one of those things too, like, you put it on, it's there, it makes you feel like you're part of this community as it's going on and everything. And then sometimes someone will bring up a film that you're like, wait a second, they'll keep continuously like talking about it. You're like, holy shit, I have seen that. I completely forgot about it, and like unlocks this little like door in your brain, and now you have to search and like rewatch whatever film it was, and just kind of recapture that little bit of like nostalgia from your youth, as it were.
Yeah, completely. And that's something that we, there is intent now going into these projects, that we want to create an environment. And in fact, with the live events this Sunday, we've got Brian Usner coming on for a live Q&A with our backers, one of many over the next year. And In Search of Darkness 1994 will be released at the end of this year. But, the expanded format is something that I want to apply to perfect movies. So I've got another question for you, actually.
All right.
We're gonna focus on The Thing, But one of the things I want to do is I want to double down on our horror output.
All
So
right.
we're going to, the projects that I'm going to be doing over the next couple of years, as it stands, are going to be more and more horror related. Outside of the Thing, what other horror movies have the depth, complexity, are kind of perfect movies that you think would be relevant for this expanded format?
Really, really, really deep dive. I think one, like I imagine a lot of people have probably mentioned this one because it's almost part of the Mount Rushmore of sci-fi horror, would be Cronenberg's The Fly.
Oh, you know what? Actually, I hadn't thought of that. And I love that movie. No one suggested that to me yet. I've had Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yep.
So the other caveat is that it has to have a big enough fan base.
Correct. Yeah.
Do you think The Fly has?
I don't know. Like, I know Cronenberg himself does. Obviously, I don't think it's as prevalent, like in the zeitgeist of like pop culture and stuff, as Wes Craven's original, like Nightmare on Elm Street and everything, just because of the character there. But you are starting to see this almost refinding of earlier Cronenberg stuff. People that kind of missed out on it and stuff. I don't know if it's because his son Brandon is starting to put movies out, so his name's starting to get out a little bit more again with his older stuff. Like, oh, remember he did Videodrome, he did The Brood, like and stuff like that. And it just kind of culminates to, it's like, well, we've got Jeff Goldblum, Gina Davis. It's kind of like this perfect encapsulation of.
But it is a perfect movie, isn't it? Like,
yes.
It's flawless. It's
Yes.
flawless. We did a watch party about a year ago, and I rewatched it, and I'm like, nothing. It's flawless.
Yeah, and it's one of the first horror films that like legitimately made me sad when I was younger. Like how that movie ends and everything is super depressing, but in a good way. Like it's not what you expected it to be going into it, especially if you'd seen the original version of it. It's 100%
I watched the original and the original sequel, which is black and white, which
Yes.
is weird because they go some kinds of black and white, and they have their own charm, absolutely. But then, I mean, there's a parallel there between Howard Hawks' The Thing and Carpenter's The Thing. There's a, you know, the 1940 whatever year it was.
Yeah.
The Thing is a great film. I've watched it with my father. He prefers that version to Carpenter's.
Okay.
Right. And it's, you know, apart from there's just a guy in a rubber suit at the end.
Correct.
You know, right. But for its time, it was very effective. But there was a parallel between the Fly and that, because both remakes,
Correct.
I suppose you call them, were next level, and they took it. They had this creative and artistic integrity and vision
Yes.
that went completely out there, like no holds barred. Like the graphic content of both films. I mean, you got to remember The Fly. I mean, the thing. In some respects, could overshadow The Fly because it's so visceral. But
Correct.
You know, there's shotgun. I mean, it's just horrific in The Fly, and you know, there's something to that. I'm sure that'll be part of the conversation.
Yeah, it's just one of those films that like it always kind of blows my mind. Like it seems like horror fans know that movie, but like how many people just kind of outside of that grouping, it's like, oh, have you ever seen The Fly? And they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And you like show them like who's in it, and they're like, how did I not see this? And
Like, don't you think that's kind of cool? Like, this
absolutely.
I feel like The Thing is like, what I'm learning is I'm joining. Hopefully, I'll be accepted into this secret society of horror fans that just dig this film. Like, I'm wearing a Thing t-shirt. If you didn't know me and I walked down the road and you saw my t-shirt, you kind of know we'd be cool.
yeah, that was the first thing I noticed.
There's a brotherhood. There's a kind of common ground there, and yeah, that's kind of special. I mean, I'm only going to do projects that I care about, and I really care about this, and I want to work with the fans to build something which I can look back on and go, that was like the best year ever.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm not going to hold you here much longer, Robin. I do thank you for coming and kind of
It's been awesome.
spreading the gospel that is the thing. Where can my listeners find all of your Kickstarters and your links?
Well, for this is my request, right?
All right.
If you're a fan of the thing, and I'll give you the link so you can get it. My biggest thing is people to follow on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at Thing Expanded. That's one word. And I'll send you the survey link. So the survey link's the most important thing. Think of it as the beginning of a conversation with us, the producers, and you, the fans. Right now, we just want to get your insights on what you would like to see and why this film is meaningful to you. And, you know, we're going to hit, I think, 500 surveys this week.
Wow.
Right. And we'll go into the thousands if it keeps carrying on. But then we're going to listen to everybody and come back to you with like, well, this is what people are saying. And eventually come back to you with a synopsis where we want to continue this dialogue all the way to hopefully July this year, when we will run the first pre-sale for the Thing Expanded, but only if enough people show interest.
Correct. Yeah. Yep. People got to show up. You guys got to hear what we're saying and go follow, check it out. Robin, again, thank you for coming on. And listeners out there, you got to follow the links. I'm going to have all the links in the description below of the podcast and everything. So again, thank you very much. And I'm Nicholas for Pot of the Dead, and come back and listen to us, or else.